Imagine a poster on a wall. It shows a strong soldier with bright eyes and a raised fist. The words say, "Your country needs you." You feel something inside your chest. Maybe pride, maybe fear, maybe both. Now imagine millions of people seeing that same poster on the street, in the newspaper, in their schools, all at the same time. They don't just see the message, they feel it, they believe it. And slowly, without fully knowing it, they begin to think the way someone else wants them to think. This is propaganda, and it is one of the most powerful forces in all of human history. It has started wars, it has ended them. It has built nations, and it has destroyed them. Today, we are going to learn its story, from the ancient world to your smartphone screen right now. Hi, and welcome to Daily English Origins. Are you learning English? Great! Let's learn English with a very interesting story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. Let's get started. Let's start with the most important question. What is propaganda? Propaganda is a way of spreading information, or sometimes false information, to influence how people think, feel, and act. The goal is usually to make people support a leader, a government, a war, or an idea. Propaganda does not always tell lies. Sometimes it tells the truth, but it always chooses which truth to tell and how to tell it to create a specific emotion. That emotion is usually fear, pride, loyalty, or anger. Think of it like a painter. A painter chooses what to include in a picture and what to leave out. Propaganda works the same way. It paints a picture of the world, but only shows you what it wants you to see. Propaganda did not start with television or the internet. It started thousands of years ago with stone. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs, the kings and rulers of Egypt, carved stories into temple walls and stone monuments. These carvings showed the pharaoh as a giant, powerful god. His enemies were always shown as small and weak. These images were propaganda. They told the people, "Your leader is divine. He cannot lose. You must obey." In ancient Rome, emperors put their own faces on every coin in the empire. Every time a Roman citizen held a coin to buy bread, they saw the face of their emperor. This was not an accident. It was a message. I am everywhere. I am powerful. I am in control. These early rulers understood something very important. The story you tell about yourself is just as important as the power you actually have. For thousands of years, religion was one of the most powerful tools of propaganda in human history. Religious leaders used art, music, architecture, and storytelling to spread their message. Beautiful cathedrals, large, grand churches, were built to make people feel small before God. Paintings showed saints and holy figures in golden light. Sermons, religious speeches, were given every week to thousands of listeners. In the year 1622, something very significant happened. Pope Gregory XV, the leader of the Catholic Church in Rome, created an official organization called the Sacra Congregatio de Propaganda Fide. In English, this means the Sacred Congregation for the Spreading of the Faith. This is actually where we get the word propaganda. It comes from the Latin word propagare, which means to spread or to plant and grow. At first, propaganda simply meant spreading religious belief. But over time, the word gained a darker meaning, the spreading of any message by any powerful group for any purpose. For most of human history, information moved slowly. A message had to travel by horse, by ship, or by word of mouth. Most people could not read. Knowledge stayed with the powerful. Then, in 1440, a German man named Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press. The printing press was a machine that could print many copies of a text very quickly. Before this invention, copying one book took a monk many months. After this invention, hundreds of books could be printed in days. This changed everything. Suddenly, ideas could travel fast, very fast. Pamphlets, small printed papers with a message, could be made cheaply and passed to thousands of people. Religious leaders, politicians, and revolutionaries all rushed to use this new technology. In the 1500s, a German monk named Martin Luther used the printing press to spread his criticism of the Catholic Church. His 95 Theses, a list of 95 arguments against church practices, was printed and spread across Europe in just a few weeks. This helped start the Protestant Reformation, a major religious revolution that split Christianity into different groups. The printing press taught the world a lesson that still holds true today. Whoever controls the flow of information holds enormous power. As Europe's kingdoms grew stronger, rulers learned to use propaganda to build something called national identity. National identity is the feeling that you belong to a nation, that you share a culture, a language, and a history with other people in your country. Flags were designed, national anthems, official songs of a country were written. History books were printed with stories of brave kings and glorious battles. These stories were carefully chosen to make citizens feel proud and loyal. During wars, propaganda became especially important. Rulers needed their people to want to fight. They needed soldiers to be willing to die, and they needed ordinary citizens to pay taxes, work hard, and make sacrifices for the war effort. To do this, governments used a classic technique. They made the enemy look evil. Enemy soldiers were drawn as monsters in newspapers. Enemy leaders were described as cruel and barbaric. The enemy's religion, language, or culture was mocked and belittled. This technique is called dehumanization. Dehumanization means making a person or a group seem less than human. When people believe their enemy is a monster, not a person, it becomes easier to support killing them. This technique was used in Europe, in Asia, in the Americas. Everywhere humans have gone to war, this same dark tool has appeared. By the 1800s, newspapers had become the most powerful force in public opinion. Public opinion means what ordinary people think and believe about the world around them. Newspapers were read by millions, and newspaper owners knew their power. In the United States, two powerful newspaper owners, William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer, competed fiercely for readers. To sell more papers, they published dramatic, emotional, and sometimes exaggerated stories. This style of journalism was called yellow journalism. Yellow journalism uses sensational stories, exciting and shocking stories, often exaggerated, to attract readers and create strong emotions. In 1898, the American battleship USS Maine exploded in the harbor of Havana, Cuba. Nobody knew exactly why. But newspapers, especially Hearst papers, immediately blamed Spain, which controlled Cuba at the time. The headline screamed, "Remember the Maine! To hell with Spain!" The American public became furious. They demanded war, and the United States went to war with Spain. Later, historians debated whether Spain was truly responsible for the explosion. But the newspapers had already shaped public opinion. The decision was made. This story shows us something frightening. A newspaper headline can help start a war. Before World War I, propaganda was used, but not always systematically. Systematically means in an organized, planned, and efficient way. World War I changed that completely. When the war began in 1914, governments across Europe and America realized they faced a new problem. This was not a small war with professional soldiers. This was a total war, a war that needed the entire population. Every man, woman, and child had to contribute. Soldiers had to volunteer or accept being drafted. Civilians at home had to buy war bonds, grow their own food, and accept shortages of basic goods. To make all of this happen, governments needed to control how their citizens felt about the war. They needed people to feel that the war was necessary, noble, and worth every sacrifice. So for the first time in history, governments created official propaganda departments dedicated entirely to producing and spreading persuasive messages. In Britain, the government created the War Propaganda Bureau. In the United States, President Woodrow Wilson created the Committee on Public Information, led by a journalist named George Creel. These organizations produced thousands of posters, pamphlets, films, and newspaper articles. They organized public speakers called 4-Minute Men, volunteers who gave short, emotional speeches in movie theaters, churches, and public spaces. The most famous poster from this era showed a stern-faced man pointing directly at the viewer. "I want you," it said. The man was Uncle Sam, the symbolic figure of the United States government. That poster recruited millions of soldiers. Propaganda had become a science, and the world would never be the same. In the early 1900s, a new technology arrived that changed propaganda forever. It was the radio. Before radio, a government could print posters and newspapers, but those required people to read. Radio was different. Radio could speak directly into a person's living room. into their kitchen, into their bedroom at night. For the first time in history, a leader's voice could reach millions of people at exactly the same moment. This was an extraordinary power. Extraordinary means unusual and remarkable, far beyond what is normal. In the United States, President Franklin D. Roosevelt understood this power deeply. During the Great Depression, a period of severe economic hardship in the 1930s, when millions of Americans lost their jobs and homes, Roosevelt began giving regular radio speeches. He called them fireside chats. He spoke calmly, warmly, as if he were sitting beside you near a fireplace. He used simple words. He explained complex problems in ways ordinary people could understand. Americans felt that their president was speaking directly to them. They felt less afraid. They felt more hopeful. They trusted him. Roosevelt used radio not to spread fear, but to spread confidence and unity. This was propaganda too, but it was propaganda used to comfort and stabilize a broken nation. Not every leader used radio so kindly. In Germany, a man named Adolf Hitler rose to power in 1933. Hitler understood propaganda perhaps better than any leader in history, and he used it to commit some of the greatest crimes the world has ever seen. Hitler appointed a man named Joseph Goebbels as his minister of propaganda. Goebbels was intelligent, ruthless, and totally devoted to Hitler. He believed that if you repeat a message enough times, in enough places, people will eventually believe it, even if it is false. Goebbels controlled everything: newspapers, radio stations, films, theater, art, music, books. If a message did not support the Nazi government, it was banned, made illegal. Books that contained ideas the Nazis disliked were burned publicly in large bonfires. This was called Bücherverbrennung, the book burning. Nazi propaganda had three main goals: make German people feel superior, better and more powerful than other groups; dehumanize Jewish people, Roma people, and other minorities, portraying them as dangerous enemies of Germany; make Hitler seem like a godlike figure, a savior sent to restore Germany's greatness. Massive rallies, large public gatherings, were organized in the city of Nuremberg. Hundreds of thousands of people stood in perfect rows under giant flags. Spotlights lit the night sky. Music thundered. And Hitler spoke with terrifying passion. People who attended these rallies described feeling overwhelmed, swept away by emotion. Logic and doubt disappeared. Only the feeling remained. This is what total propaganda can do. It does not just change what people think. It changes what they feel. And feelings are far more powerful than facts. The result of this propaganda machine was catastrophic. It led directly to World War II and the Holocaust. The systematic murder of 6 million Jewish people and millions of others. World War II was fought on two battlefields at the same time. The physical battlefield, with soldiers, tanks, and bombs, and the psychological battlefield with images, words, and emotions. Psychological means related to the mind and how people think and feel. Every major nation produced enormous amounts of propaganda. In the United States, Hollywood film studios work directly with the government. Famous directors like Frank Capra made documentary films explaining why America was fighting and who the enemy was. Animated films, cartoons, showed characters like Bugs Bunny and Donald Duck defeating Nazi soldiers. These cartoons reached children and families in movie theaters every week. Posters covered American cities. The most iconic, most famous, and widely recognized was the image of Rosie the Riveter. Rosie was a fictional woman with rolled-up sleeves and a strong arm, with the words, "We can do it." She encouraged American women to work in factories while men were away fighting. This was not just a war message. It quietly began changing ideas about what women could do in society. In Britain, the government created posters with calm, reassuring messages. "Keep calm and carry on" was printed to help citizens manage fear during German bombing attacks. In Japan, propaganda portrayed the emperor as a divine figure, literally a god on earth, and called on citizens to die for him with honor and joy. In the Soviet Union, the large communist country that is today Russia and surrounding nations, propaganda showed heroic Soviet workers and soldiers defeating fascism, an extreme and violent political system. That glorified the nation and its leader above all else. Every side believed they were telling the truth. Every side believed the enemy was lying. This is one of propaganda's cruelest tricks. It makes everyone feel righteous. Righteous means believing that you are completely correct and morally justified. After World War II ended in 1945, two enormous powers remained standing: the United States and the Soviet Union. They had fought on the same side against Nazi Germany, but now they became rivals, competitors for global power and influence. This long period of tension, from about 1947 to 1991, is called the Cold War. It was called cold because the two superpowers never directly fought each other in open battle. Instead, they competed through ideas. Each side wanted the world to believe that their system was better. The United States promoted capitalism and democracy. Capitalism is an economic system where individuals and private companies own businesses and compete freely. Democracy is a political system where citizens vote for their leaders. The Soviet Union promoted communism. Communism is a system where the government owns most property and resources, and, in theory, wealth is shared equally among citizens. Both sides use propaganda intensely to win this battle of ideas. The United States found creative ways to spread its message behind the Iron Curtain, the name given to the invisible border separating communist Eastern Europe from democratic Western Europe. The CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, America's main spy organization, secretly funded Radio Free Europe. Radio Free Europe was a broadcasting service that sent news and cultural programming into Soviet-controlled countries like Poland, Hungary, and Czechoslovakia. Citizens in those countries could secretly tune in and hear a different point of view, one the communist government did not control. The United States also used cultural propaganda. Cultural propaganda uses art, music, literature, and lifestyle to spread ideas. American jazz music was broadcast into the Soviet Union. Abstract art, a style of painting that communist authorities criticized as meaningless, was quietly supported by the CIA as a symbol of American freedom. Hollywood films showed American life as glamorous, free, and prosperous. Prosperous means successful and wealthy. People around the world watched American movies and dreamed of American life. Even blue jeans became a symbol of freedom. In Soviet-controlled countries, young people risked punishment to own a pair of American jeans. A piece of clothing had become a political statement. The Soviet Union fought back. Their own propaganda showed American racism, poverty, and inequality. And these messages were not always lies. America had real problems. The Soviets simply highlighted them to make their own system look better by comparison. This is another key lesson of propaganda. Truth and deception are often mixed together, making it difficult to tell one from the other. By the 1950s and 1960s, television had entered millions of homes, and it transformed propaganda once again. Television combined the emotion of radio, the human voice, with the visual power of film. Now, a leader's face, expression, and body language were visible to everyone. This created a new kind of political image management. Image management means carefully controlling how a leader appears and is perceived by the public. In 1960, the United States held its first televised presidential debate between John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon. People who listened on the radio thought Nixon won. He made strong arguments. But people who watched on television thought Kennedy won. Kennedy was young, handsome, calm, and confident. Nixon looked tired and pale under the bright studio lights. Kennedy won the election. This moment proved that in the television age, how you look could be just as important as what you say. Leaders around the world began hiring image consultants, experts who advised on clothing, hairstyle, posture, speech patterns, and even lighting. Television also brought the reality of war in the living rooms. During the Vietnam War, American journalists filmed real combat footage, soldiers dying, villages burning, civilians suffering. These images were broadcast on the evening news every night. American citizens saw what war actually looked like. Not the heroic posters of World War II, but the brutal, painful, exhausting truth. Public opinion turned against the war. Protests, public demonstrations against government policy erupted across the country. The government had lost control of the narrative. Narrative means the story being told about events. And without control of the narrative, support for the war collapsed. Vietnam taught governments a painful lesson. Uncontrolled media can be just as powerful as armies. The final decades of the 20th century brought cable television, 24-hour news channels, and eventually the Internet. Each new technology brought new propaganda possibilities and new dangers. Cable news channels like CNN, launched in 1980, began broadcasting news around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This created a relentless demand for content, stories, images, and commentary that never stopped. News was no longer something you watched at 6 p.m. and again at 11 p.m. It was a constant river flowing through every screen. Political leaders, corporations, and interest groups, organized groups of people who share a common goal, learned to flood this river with their own messages. Spin doctors emerged. Spin doctors are political advisors whose job is to take any story, good or bad, and present it in the most favorable way possible for their client. They control the language. They choose which facts to emphasize. They redirect attention when something goes wrong. In the 1990s, during the Gulf War between the United States and Iraq, the military introduced the concept of embedded journalism. Embedded journalists traveled directly with military units. They saw what the military allowed them to see. Their stories were generally positive about the soldiers around them, because those soldiers were their friends and protectors. This was a brilliant propaganda strategy. It did not censor journalists, stop them from reporting. It simply shaped where they stood and what they saw. And then came the Internet. And everything changed again. When the Internet arrived in the 1990s, it promised something revolutionary. Revolutionary means a complete and dramatic change from everything before. It promised that ordinary people, not just governments, not just powerful corporations, could share information freely with the entire world. For a moment, it felt like propaganda might lose its power. If everyone could speak, if every story could be told, surely the truth would rise to the surface. That hope was real, but it was also naive. Naive means too trusting and not fully understanding the dangers of a situation. Because the same tools that gave ordinary people a voice also gave propagandists something they had never had before: direct, personal, cheap, and instant access to billions of human minds. No printing press needed, no government department, no expensive television studio, just a screen and a message. By the 2010s, social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, had become the primary way hundreds of millions of people received their news and understood the world. These platforms were built around a concept called the algorithm. An algorithm is a set of mathematical rules that a computer uses to decide what content to show you. Social media algorithms were designed to show you content that kept you engaged, that kept you watching, scrolling, and clicking. And what kind of content kept people most engaged? Content that made them feel strong emotions, fear, anger, outrage, tribal pride, the feeling that your group is right and the other group is wrong. This meant that emotional, dramatic, and divisive content that divided people into opposing groups, spread faster and further than calm, balanced reporting. Divisive content tore people apart, but it generated enormous amounts of clicks. Propaganda creators around the world discovered this immediately. If you created a message designed to trigger fear or anger, the algorithm would do the distribution work for you for free. Two important words entered the global conversation in the mid-2000s: fake news and disinformation. Fake news means false stories presented as real news. Disinformation means deliberately spreading false information to deceive people. Deliberately means doing something on purpose with full knowledge of what you are doing. During the 2016 United States presidential election, researchers discovered that foreign actors, groups from other countries, had created thousands of fake social media accounts. These accounts spread emotionally charged stories, some true, some false, many a mixture of both, designed not to support one specific candidate, but simply to confuse, divide, and weaken trust in democratic institutions. Democratic institutions are the organizations and systems, like elections, courts, and free press, that make democracy function. This strategy had a name: the fire hose of falsehood. It means flooding the public with so many contradictory stories that people no longer know what to believe. When citizens cannot agree on basic facts, democratic debate becomes impossible. During the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, the World Health Organization described an infodemic, a combination of the words information and epidemic. An epidemic is the rapid spread of disease through a population. An infodemic means the rapid spread of false information, making it difficult for people to find trustworthy guidance during a crisis. Propaganda had evolved from stone carvings to social media posts. But its core goal remained exactly the same: control what people believe, and you control what they do. As propaganda grew more sophisticated, more clever, and complex, so did the efforts to fight it. Fact-checking organizations emerged around the world. Organizations like PolitiFact, Snopes, and FullFact built teams of journalists dedicated to investigating claims made by politicians and media, and publicly rating them as true, false, or misleading. Media literacy programs, educational programs that teach people how to critically analyze media messages, were introduced in schools across Europe, North America, and parts of Asia. Finland, a small country in Northern Europe, became world famous for its media literacy education. Finnish students were taught from an early age to ask, who made this message? Why did they make it? What is it trying to make me feel? What important information might be missing? These are the questions that every good critical thinker asks. Critical thinking means the ability to analyze information carefully and objectively, without simply accepting it because it feels true or because many people believe it. Governments also began working with technology companies to label or remove demonstrably false information. Demonstrably means something that can be clearly proven with evidence. But this created new debates about censorship, the suppression of information, and who had the right to decide what was true. The battle between free expression and the harm caused by disinformation is one of the defining challenges of our time. Here is something important to understand. Propaganda today is not just something that governments do during wartime. It surrounds all of us, every single day. The advertisement that makes you feel insecure about your body is a form of propaganda. The political speech that blames all of society's problems on one group of people, that is propaganda. The social media post designed to make you feel angry at your neighbor, that is propaganda too. Even well-meaning organizations use propaganda techniques. A charity that shows you a photograph of a suffering child to inspire donations is using emotional manipulation. Deliberately creating a strong emotional response to influence your behavior. The difference between education and propaganda is often subtle. Subtle means not obvious, difficult to notice or detect. Education presents evidence, encourages questioning, and acknowledges complexity. Propaganda simplifies, emotionalizes, and discourages doubt. The most powerful protection against propaganda is not a government department or a technology platform. It is a well-trained human mind. Ask questions, check sources. Notice your emotions. Because when a message makes you feel a very strong emotion very quickly, that is often a signal that someone is trying to bypass your rational thinking. Rational means based on logic and evidence rather than emotion. Be curious. Be skeptical. Skeptical means willing to question claims and look for evidence before believing them. And be humble enough to admit when you might be wrong. The history of propaganda is in many ways the history of power itself. From the pharaohs of Egypt carving their victories into stone, to political campaigns micro-targeting your emotions through your phone screen tonight. The desire to shape what other people believe has never changed. And neither has the human hunger for truth. Every generation has faced this same struggle. Every generation has had to learn, sometimes painfully, to tell the difference between a genuine story and a manufactured one. Between a leader who speaks to inform and one who speaks to control. The printing press made information faster. Radio made it emotional. Television made it visual. The internet made it personal. And each time, people eventually adapted. They developed new tools, new habits, and new forms of critical thinking to protect themselves. You are part of that same story right now. The best weapon against propaganda has always been the same: an educated, curious, empathetic mind, one that listens with care, thinks with honesty, and has the courage to say, "I am not sure. Let me look more carefully." The world has never needed that kind of mind more than it does today. Hey there, just a second before you go. If you learned something new today, please give this video a like, write your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second, and it really helps to create even better English videos for you. Your support means the world. Thank you.